Welcome to the people already joined. Typically, we see that people tend to drop in 1 or 2 minutes late because you're shifting platforms or meetings or stuff like that. So let's wait 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll kick off this new webinar about the data product portal. So I see attendance increasing. So once again, welcome to everyone joining this new webinar on the data product portal. My name is Wannes Rosiers. I'm go-to-market lead for Conveyor. Conveyor is a data product workbench, so we allow you to easily develop data products. And recently, we've released a new open source project, the Data Product Portal, which we will be talking about today, together with Niels. Niels Cautaerts is, well, a bit of everything. Officially a research software developer and a data scientist at VITO, and VITO is the first company using Portal in production. So will be very nice to get some insights on how they're using Portal, what it's solving, and where they're heading towards. But maybe Niels, as said, you do a bit of everything. You have a background as a PhD researcher as well. You have some industry expertise as a data consultant. Must be a good background to actually become such a research software developer and a data scientist. But maybe there's more. So who are you? What can we expect from you?
Yeah, hi, Wannes. Thanks for inviting me on this webinar. Originally, I'm actually a material scientist, and I used to work in a lab mainly. And then during my PhD, I wrote a lot of Python to automate things, to simplify working with my own data. And eventually, I rolled more into computer stuff, did a postdoc for a while where I mainly did simulations and writing custom analyses of complex data sets. And eventually, I left academia and went into data engineering consulting. However, what I missed in that role was doing something that's still related to science, and that's something that I can do in my current role at VITO. I combine a little bit of everything. Officially, my title is researcher, but I do a lot of data engineering, data science, and some software engineering, depending on which project I'm working on. So.
Cool, thanks, Niels. But of course, today you're here for a very specific reason. You're presenting or helping to explain to other people what the data product portal is all about. We describe it as kind of a bridge to move towards all tools relevant in your data governance space or everything around your data products. You're one of the early adopters at VITO, but VITO is, I guess, not the most well-known company out there tied to research. So to give us a bit of a background, which kind of companies are really relevant as users of Portal, can you explain us a bit what VITO is about?
VITO is a research organization, non-for-profit. The research topics focus on sustainability mainly as kind of the core theme. Off the top of my head, I can't list everything that we do We have researchers that work in the lab on new batteries, but we also have researchers modeling air quality in cities or using satellite imagery to check what's going on around the world related to crops and climate change. So yeah, there's a lot of things that VITO does, but the thing that ties it all together is that VITO works fully project-based. So everything at VITO is a project. There's very little processes, and projects are mainly funded through funding from the government or through grants or through partnerships with industry partners. And yeah, I think the also an important thing is that most of the research at VITO is applied. So we don't do pure academic research. There's a real explicit goal to develop useful products and services somehow.
Yep. In research, of course, data seems quite critical, and probably every result needs to be backed with data, and every experiment or calculation needs to be repeatable. You need to prove the results you've had before. Seems like quite a challenge, maybe for a data department, but when I hear you talk, you're more project-based. You probably always have a few people working on such one project. Maybe there is not really a data department. So how do you cope with this? How are you organized and specifically with a focus on data?
Yeah, we definitely don't have really a data department, although the group that I'm part of sort of aims to offer some of the services that a data department might offer. At VITO, since we have many researchers, most people are users, consumers, producers of data somehow. And yeah, I don't know. We have to somehow find a way to the core issue that we face sometimes is that everyone does their own thing. VITO is very decentralized. Everyone does their own thing. There's a very lean central services. So IT doesn't even offer everything that everyone needs. If you need certain specific IT resources or infrastructure, then it's usually up to specific departments or even research groups to set that up. And that can be, well, the advantage of this kind of decentralized way of working is that IT and business or research, in our case, work very closely together. That's very nice. Things go fast. The downside is that, yeah, it's very difficult to standardize things. And then when VITO now has the goal of doing more cross-unit, cross-domain research, it becomes very difficult because different units are not talking to each other, are working on different systems. And,
yeah, for those that have attended previous webinars, they know I don't like slides, but I try to get some of them in there to get some structure. You're really touching already towards the first topic that I want to describe. Large part of the challenge, if I hear you talk, is balancing. Well, balancing the standardization, as you were mentioning, it's difficult to introduce a standardization as there are so many data workers, probably all having their own preferences. You want some standardization, you want some flexibility as well. Might have led to a widespread data landscape at VITO. Okay, can you tell something about all the tools you have within your landscape?
That's it's really impossible to list everything. I mean, as I mentioned, each team more or less does whatever they deem necessary. Everyone does their own thing. So we have teams that work only with whatever is provided by the let's say central IT, so mainly Excel-based workflows. We have some people who maybe are coding with Python on their laptop. We also have a central HPC cluster. Some users are using that, but some people at VITO are still not even aware that this cluster exists. But then we also have teams and groups that have built their own and are managing their own Hadoop clusters to do a bunch of automated data processing on satellite imagery. There's really all kinds of stuff at VITO. And the challenge is somehow, making those people talk to each other, making it possible to combine that data, but still offering people the flexibility to do whatever they want or use the tools that they're familiar with. That's very tricky.
Yeah, small sidestep with regards to that, to also wrap up the context about you, about VITO, about the technical landscape. Of course, I know you've quite recently started the integration of Conveyor in that landscape. That is probably aiming to bring a bit of that standardization, or to allow you to balance the standardization and the flexibility for other people. It also brings some repeatability. Is that why you were looking to Conveyor, or is there more to it?
Not really, I would say. It's more, for us, Conveyor was sort of like a out-of-the-box solution for running workflows where there isn't such a kind of solution at VITO at this moment, or not one that is centrally supported. Something where you can say, okay, I need to somehow process this data, and it needs to run in an automated way, and I need to manage those workflows somehow. There's not really a solution to do that at VITO. So many people who have this kind of requirement, they run it on their own laptop or set up some kind of server somewhere and set up cron jobs. And there's all kinds of hackiness. And that's something that Conveyor really solves for us. Some things, you need to automate. We also saw a potential application for it in research projects where the demand is, okay, I want to know exactly how some piece of output was produced. I want this to be fully reproducible. And our idea is that, well, since Conveyor runs containerized workflows, it's sort of the best guarantee to ensure that something is repeatable. You press the button and it runs again. But we have to see whether, we still have to see whether that application will work, whether researchers will actually use it. And finally, it's sort of another tool that we can offer to those at VITO who really have nothing yet in terms of compute or a way to do things except for their own laptop. Conveyor gives a nice kind of default, like, hey, here you can use this for interacting with your data, and it just works out of the box. Those were sort of the main uses for us.
Yeah, thanks, Niels, for that insight. But enough about Conveyor. Today is about Portal. Not only thanks for you for that insight, also thanks to Ivo for putting something in the chat. Hi, Ivo and Gaetan. It reminds me to tell you, if you have any questions for me or probably for Niels, so feel free to address Niels, just put them in the chat and I'll try to get them in the webinar. There is some time for questions afterwards, but if I see a good spot to fit them in within the process, I'll do it earlier. But as I said, today is all about Portal, Niels. You're one of the early adopters of the data product Portal. It also implies that you're an adopter of one of the early versions of Portal. So let's start with the vision. Where do you believe Portal will fit in the near future? Which problem do you want to solve with Portal? So where do you see it heading within VITO?
So when I was working as a data engineer, I was introduced to the concept of purpose-based access control to access your data. So basically, you get access to a certain resource or to some piece of data based on what you are doing, what you want to do, and not based on who you are. And I thought that was a really interesting and useful concept to also introduce at VITO, especially because so many people are working on so many different projects at the same time, and it becomes really difficult to keep track of, okay, this piece of data that's part of that project, or and that therefore I thought, okay, maybe we can have that as a core idea in the platform that we want to build. And the way you would implement that is mainly you instead of assigning, the way access is now currently organized at VITO is oftentimes users are part of groups, Active Directory groups, and then that gives you access to certain resources. And what we wanted to do was say, okay, you have certain roles, and those roles give you access to certain things. And then you as a user, you can assume different roles. And for us, the main thing for Portal, at least in the initial stage, was, okay, but you still need something to tell you, okay, this user can assume this role or not. And that's the basic functionality that we wanted out of Portal, and this is what it's able to do. So we can say, okay, all these users, they're able to work on these. For us, initially it was projects, but now it's called data products. And then all those users working on that data product, they can immediately click a button and be directly, logged into AWS with the right role, for example, or they can immediately have the right permissions on different systems. So that was a key thing that Portal solved for us. And a second thing was we want the platform to be sort of as self-service as possible, so people can just log in and manage their own projects, create a new project, make data sets, etc., and share them. And initially that was sort of possible. We did kind of like a proof of concept platform, and in that workflow we had that built into the platform using YAML files. But then to update kind of the permissions, you have to modify those YAML files, and that's not really user friendly. So this is more like a user friendly way for users to update permissions themselves, and there is a nice request flow implemented in there, so users can say, okay, can I please become part of this project? Can I please have access to this data, etc., etc. So it's kind of like a nice, to sum it up, for me, Portal is mainly kind of like a tool for authorization, and also an entry point to different services, because it allows you to get the right credentials immediately. So, and so we hope it will contribute to data sharing and working together across different units and projects.
I'm going to play the advocate of the devil here, Niels. You're mentioning it helps us with authentication, setting permissions. Don't tools already allow you to do this? Maybe a bit more isolated, but do you really require a different tool to be added to your data landscape? And you were also saying Portal is aiming to be the bridge between a lot of tools with regards to this data governance, with access management, maybe even to development if you count Conveyor. So we believe it's aiming to bring some simplifications here, but is adding a new tool not just adding more complexity? Apologies for the twofold question. So in short, why yet another tool, and how does it simplify stuff rather than making it more complex?
I think it's more logical that you have a central place where kind of permissions are managed on your platform, and then all the tools that you navigate to are automatically, you have the right permissions. So there's kind of like a default entry point. Otherwise, you just have a bag of tools that do different things, and it might not be clear how all the permissions are set on all those. So with Portal, you get like this is how we organize access to resources. And I think that makes things more simple in some ways. Of course, in other ways, yeah, indeed, another tool will always add some complexity, I think. You have to do another click to go to another service. That's like an additional little barrier of friction. But I think, yeah, complex problems sometimes require a solution that is as complex as it needs to be.
And getting back to your side of the table, no more advocate of the devil. Like you were referring to it as you move from a bag of tools, and can I then add on to it towards introducing platform thinking, right, where you try to really connect all those tools together, and even though it's with an additional click, it's a single entry point where you go, and from there on you can move on. So it's really shifting a bag of tools to a platform. Is that a bit it?
Yes, I guess, yeah. So it's like you want to work with data. This is where
your journey starts.
It makes sense for us,
yeah. Time for some brutal honesty. You've told about the vision, but as we said, you're an early adopter, one of the earliest versions. There will be things building up to this vision that are not yet there, or that are not yet working how you would expect. You might need to jump through some hoops to get some things working, and so on. Let's start with the implementation. I always tell I'm not technical, but at least I managed to clone the project, run it locally with the Docker post command and stuff like that. But that's locally. Is it also this simple to get it working in your company context, or what were the main challenges you had to overcome to get it up and running?
Well, I'm not the person who wrote the code for the deployment, so I can't give all the details. I know it's deployed in an EKS cluster in our AWS account. And instead of using a container for the database, we use a RDS instance. And yeah, the Helm chart apparently exists somewhere, but I haven't looked at it. So, for me, it just works. Someone else set this up. I think the hard part is not necessarily deploying platform, or deploying the portal, but tying it to your, connecting everything up with the rest of your platform. Because I think this will always be require some customization. Like you have your platform code, maybe it's in Terraform. You have to somehow get Portal to do things, take actions on your platform. Like your permissions have to be updated, maybe roles have to be updated, things have to be created, maybe buckets. I'm just saying stuff. Now the way that we do this is using like a Lambda. So we essentially take the data from Portal and we update the platform code this way. But yeah, to tie it all together with everything else that exists, I think that's the real challenge. But from a user perspective, it was really simple. If it just is existing and you log in, for us, it was integrated with Active Directory. Everyone at VITO can log in. So that's very, very simple. But for platform people, I think the challenge is really tying it together with the rest of your platform.
Yeah, no, it's by the way very good that you stress that Conveyor Portal is not really a catalog, or we sometimes call it a data product catalog as well, or being within the category of data product catalogs. But I think compared with typical data catalogs, it's much more actionable. Like you're saying, Portal is there to allow you to update permissions. Portal is there to allow you to manage infrastructure. But that will be the hard part of the implementation. And then indeed, the next thing I want to discuss is if it's there up and running, what's next? It's probably about starting data products or projects, as I believe you still refer to them. So from a pure user perspective and adding some data products, what's your experience with setting up the first ones? And very important, and I think it already ties a bit to a question of Ivo in the chat. Who's taking this responsibility? Who's your end user for Portal?
Our end user can be anyone at this moment. So we've left it completely open. Everyone at VITO can log in, and everyone at VITO can start creating data products as they wish. So for now, we are assuming responsible users. We keep it as open as possible, and we see what happens. We found that if you add barriers or friction to onboarding to a platform, then many people already say, "I'm not even gonna try it." We also have our HPC cluster has the same philosophy. Everyone can log in, use resources, and we expect you to be a responsible user. Yeah. So for us, yeah, responsibility for creating stuff and assigning, everyone can basically do it. The main challenge will be, because Portal has certain concepts, has like a data product. When you create a data product, it's kind of like a project. Someone has to be responsible for that. Usually it's the person who creates it, that you can assign other owners to it. But also data sets, they're separate from data products. You have to somehow assign ownership to a data set. And that might be different from the person who is the owner of the data product. And that might lead to some discussions, like who is actually the owner of data. But those are things that technology cannot solve, I think.
No, indeed.
Just discussion in the organization.
To really clarify the answer with regards to a question of Ivo in the chat, he says, from Niels' explanation, it seems that a technical background in data engineering is needed. Is that correct? I think if I can summarize what you're saying, you need a technical, maybe not even data engineering, but really platform engineering background to get Portal up and running in your environment, to configure how you manage AWS permissions, to configure the integration with Conveyor or something else. If you look to Conveyor as a product, that's really aiming towards data engineers, analytics engineers, people that write code. But if you look to Portal, that's no longer the case. I hear you talking, it's really about getting this open to everyone where they can create a new data product, own it if you have a process to assign ownership and stuff like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, for using the portal, you don't need any special credentials or skills. It's just a web interface where you can create projects, can create data sets, can request access to certain projects and data sets. You don't need anything special. We think that there will be multimodal use, where some people are really hardcore data engineers and they use the platform for creating pipelines, automating stuff, the usual data engineering stuff. But there's also going to be users just browsing the data catalog, and they might use the portal as an entry point.
Yep.
Or even downloading a file manually through the AWS console, if it's that could also be a thing.
Back to Portal being early stage, there are still a few important things missing. I think in your context, we discussed a bit up front. You shared that the integration with data was not yet there. But maybe there's more. What are you mainly missing at this point? And from our side, it's brutal honest, and we offer full transparency. But it might be relevant because maybe someone in the audience is willing to add to this project as it's open source. So really go wild. What is it that you're missing, Niels?
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, the core feature that was missing was the actionable thing where Portal gives you actual access to concrete resources. So the key thing tying Portal to the actual platform, that was a missing link where we had to do some extracting of data from Portal and then applying it in the actual platform. So the concept in Portal is called a data object or a data output or something like that, where essentially it's like an S3 prefix, or it's a glue database, or it could be really anything. But you want to somehow say, okay, this project can write to that data object. You have permission to write that. And then you can create data sets, which are groupings of data objects, or data objects, data outputs. And those can be then reused in other projects or data products. And that thing where it's like the concrete technical thing of you get access to this S3 prefix or this glue database, that was not implemented in Portal. So that was implemented separately in the Terraform code and using some assumptions and Portal information. But I've seen now a demo recently of kind of a beta version where this is going to be implemented, at least for some specific technical resources. But of course, for each technology, you will need a separate type of plugin, maybe. Like suppose you want to use Portal to give access to Postgres schemas or tables or whatever, then that will be a separate type of plugin.
Yeah. As mentioned before, that might be the strength of being an open source project. If someone needs a Postgres integration, they can provide it and feed it back to the system so that others can benefit from it as well.
And the main thing I'm also missing, in my opinion, is documentation. At least as someone who is also, let's say, between the platform and the users, documentation is could be worked on as well.
Yeah, we're working on it, and it's maybe also good to mention that you can follow our Medium, where there are some practical guidance blog posts on how to implement stuff, how to get things up and running. So we try to get more content out there that allows us to simplify the onboarding journey towards Portal, but it should be in documentation as well. You're absolutely right. I noticed that I kind of the image and the text of this slide is the image is the next question and the text is the following two, but maybe so first focus on the value part. You are missing some parts of the promise of Portal, but as you said, we're moving towards it. You've already seen a bit of one of the things that we're doing. Still, you have selected our project already, as it brings some value as well. So what are the main benefits of the data product portal today as it is set up today?
Today, as it is, it's essentially our entry point to the various services and immediately giving users the right permissions. So for example, we have this kind of role-based access or purpose-based access mechanism. Different users, they can log into the AWS console with the role of associated with different data products, essentially. And And so in Portal, there's buttons for clicking go to AWS console, and then you're logged in immediately with the right credentials. So that just to access the AWS console with the right credentials, that's already very valuable for us in Portal. And we have sort of the same thing to using the CLI tool, where we can get local credentials for AWS. So for example, people working on the HPC cluster or even on their own laptop, if they want to access with the right credentials AWS, then this goes through Portal essentially, and that works well. In the past, that was very tricky, and now it just works. So that's, for us, I think that's the main value at this moment.
Yeah. Let's once more add Conveyor also to the discussion. You're using both of our tools. In our public demo, by the way, people can already see how the integration between the both of them looks like. But how do you see this integration? What are you expecting from it?
Yeah, of course, at this moment, it's nice that there is also a button for Conveyor in Portal. That's convenient. I would say a non-too tight integration would be best, especially as Portal is an open source project. If it's tightly integrated with Conveyor, it might give the indication that you can't really use Portal without Conveyor, which shouldn't be the case, I think. And yeah, at this moment, I think, as far as I heard, the integrations are baked in, but like a plugin system would be preferable, I think. The main downside at this moment that there's sort of two completely separate tools is that each tool manages their own users in the database. And so you have to at least log in once to each service to get it to work. You need to sync the users between the different services. That can be a little bit awkward. So
yeah, that's
I think it would be better if, let's say, Conveyor integrates with Portal rather than the other way around. Portal should be generic and it can be used for everything. Then maybe if Conveyor wants to offer that on top as kind of like a permissions-based system, I think that would be nice as a kind of out-of-the-box thing.
That's indeed something we're working on, because if you say Portal is your entry point for your user journey from where you can start something, then that should be frictionless, so that if you say in Portal, I start a new data product linked to Conveyor infrastructure, and these people must be able to work on it. You want, as you said, not force people to first log into Conveyor, then be allowed to create a data product, and then to force it back. So this is definitely something we're working on. You're kind of referring to it. It should be a one-way integration. Portal should be really standalone open source project. On the other hand, there are some insights living in Conveyor which might be relevant to push back to Portal. I'm thinking to the cost of a data product. It's calculated within Conveyor, as this is where infrastructure runs and where costs are built. But it might be relevant to see this on a data product level within the Portal. How do you see that? Should there be some insights fed back from Conveyor or other tools to the Portal, or do you believe this should not be the case?
For open source tools, I'm more in favor of the Unix philosophy. Do one thing and do it well. For me, I see Data Product Portal currently as kind of a way to organize data and resource access and kind of serve as an entry point to other services.
Yeah.
So too tight integration with one thing, I don't know, maybe it would be, for me, it would be preferable to have such a thing as like a separate service, perhaps, that you can then integrate with. But that's my opinion.
It's a clear opinion, and we value opinion from our users. So let's see how we move there. Let's get back to the future. We've first talked, where do you see Portal fitting within Conveyor in the near future? Where are we today? But now with regards to adoption, you've told it's usable for by kind of everyone. You have a large amount of people working with data. Should they really all become Portal users? And what do you believe they are doing in Portal? Or how can they really self-serve them through Portal?
I mean, if they want to use some of the platform resources, they have to go through Portal, essentially. If they want to create an environment for their project, they have to go through Portal. Whether they want to use the platform or not, that I don't think we can force it, because VITO is very much like everyone does, uses whatever tool that they're comfortable with and that they are used to. So I think it's mostly about ensuring that users see the value of this, what this adds beyond what they already have. And at this moment, everyone at VITO can already become a user. They can already use the platform. So I don't know, what else can I add?
Yeah.
It's if you want to use the platform, you have to come through Portal. And if you don't want to use the platform, you don't necessarily need to use Portal.
Yeah. And how do you see the process internally to rise this adoption? Of course, because if you introduce kind of a platform rather from a bag of tools, you move to a platform. You were saying you want this platform to be used, and you said, okay, it's fine to not use it as well, but still success is measured by how many people are in there, I guess. So how do you see this internal process?
How many people are on there? Yeah, you can log in once and then you're on the system, but then you're not necessarily using it, or it's, we have many people who expressed interest, but it's still early stages for us, and not a lot of stuff yet has been really deployed into production, for example, or some people have experimented a little bit with notebooks or manually uploading a file here or there, but at this moment, there's not yet that kind of seriousness of, okay, we build our project really on this platform. And that just requires time, because projects, research projects especially, they take time to get off the ground. So we just have to ensure that we create awareness. I'm also a fan of good, short, useful documentation, so people can actually find it, at least, and it's described if they have a question. But yeah, it's just going around and identifying projects where we can say, yeah, here this platform really has an added value, and there's lots of projects like that at VITO that we encounter all the time.
Yeah, I'll stretch my next question a bit to also answer a question from Ivo in the chat. Is Portal the front end of Conveyor? So no, and to give some history, Conveyor is a data product workbench already out there as of 2018. It has its own custom front end where you have a view on Airflow as an orchestrator, where you can have an IDE to interact with data underneath. It manages your infrastructure as well. And then quite recently, we had Christophe, kind of the mental father of Portal, stating it's cool to allow your developers, your pure technical people, to do stuff. But what's quite often missing in companies are some processes around ownership, as you were referring to, and simplifying stuff and creating new infrastructure in managing data access. And that's a gap Portal is trying to fill. And as such, they can be used in combination. You have Portal to manage processes with regards to access management, with regards to creating new infrastructure, and the data product where you actually write code is being created through Portal in Conveyor, and then in Conveyor you can start coding, scheduling it, running it on the infrastructure, stuff like that. So that's a bit the division. With that regards, Christophe is really referring to Portal as a process tool. Requesting access, approving it, implementing the access, preferably automated the implementation of the access after the approval, not only to data, but also to infrastructure. So that means you kind of need someone to manage approvals. And again, where do you see this land within VITO, within your organization? Who should get the responsibilities to approve who can access what, who can do what on which infrastructure? Where do you see this land, Niels?
Yeah, as already mentioned, at this moment, it's fully self-service. Everyone can do whatever they want. And we will evaluate whether that is a reasonable strategy in time. At this moment, keeping it as open as possible, I think, is the best for adoption. And then when problems emerge, potentially, I mean, mostly the questions that will be raised at some point, perhaps, is cost. There are many projects that we have where data volumes and compute requirements are nothing. And then some projects where there's huge amounts of data, huge amounts of compute necessary. And then there will be some question of, okay, yeah, can you really do everything? Should someone be able to set some limits? These type of questions will be answered at some point, or will need to be answered at some point. Because especially the way that VITO does, yeah, essentially the question of who pays is also a thing. Yeah? Now it's sort of a central platform that is available to everyone, but one person might be, using huge amounts of compute, huge amount of storage, and another person doing nothing, but the entire organization pays, so to say. And that is not really how VITO usually works. Usually everything is paid out of different, let's say bags, which are budgets for projects specifically. So we'll have to see how we handle those things, whether they really want to go through the effort to split things up and build projects, or whether it is central budget, or those kind of things will still come up. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, the responsibility for who takes ownership of data sets, data projects, really the ownership question, that's something that I leave up to the people who are more concerned with really the process of the data governance and the organization, things like that.
Yeah, I have two questions to wrap up. I'm first going to stay within the context of VITO. If you would have a magic wand, where do you see Portal in VITO in let's say, for example, 1 year?
It would be nice if all the researchers or even all the people at VITO know that it exists. And that is part of the day-to-day workflow to some capacity. Of course, you don't have to spend a lot of time in Portal. It's just an entry point. But at least that everyone has this, and that everyone knows where to find certain data, because that's essentially what we want to enable with our program. That you can say, I know where that is, and I can ask access to that data set. That would be the ideal location for us, I think.
Yeah, I think if you translate that to other companies, Do you think that introducing portal in an organization requires or enforces change? Because you're talking, you now have suddenly something centrally where things are managed, you have ownerships, or is it not enforcing but maybe empowering change, which is also needed? And what with regards to the flexibility, you said we have a lot of researchers all wanting different things. That's just the same in many organizations. Everyone has their own thing. So how strict is portal forcing you to be, or is it open to more tools but also more processes? Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, there is a kind of, there's of course a baked in opinion on how data access should be organized. So that's something that you cannot really get around. As far as I mean, I think it's just the fact that there's the AWS console button and you log in with the right role, those type of things, that's very useful and doesn't really need any organizational change, I think. The main thing where you may start needing discussions on an organizational level is, yeah, who is really owner of something? And what does that ownership really mean? I think those are really the questions that perhaps are raised by Portal, because you need to answer them. You whenever you create a data set or a new project or data product, you have to assign an owner. So.
Yeah, the end responsible to approve things, as we were mentioning.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Niels. I'm trying to go to make a summary, which also gives time to people to write final questions in the chat. I think for now I didn't miss any. We tried to pop them in. So already thanks for popping up one question, but I'll first try to summarize. If you look to why you've introduced Portal, it's really to get this bridge between all the things you're having and with a large focus on access management, making sure that you can have an entry point to your user journey with regards to moving to data, moving to infrastructure, to development, stuff like that. Why not enforcing it? So ideally, in 1 year, you have adoption that everyone is aware and quite a lot of people are using it. But if it already helps a part, it's fine. And what you see as the main benefits already, and probably on a longer period as well, is this credential vending, the allowing you to log in automatically with the right permission, so that really simplifies a journey that you have. If you look to the integration with Conveyor, which is of course also there, you advise us to not tighten it too much, make it a one-way direction so that you can really use one tool with regards to the other. And you have some wish list, but well, part of it is already done or you've seen in beta. So we're moving forward, and it's the goal of an open source project. So already bringing some value, not yet everything's there. We're moving forward, but you really see a good direction where it's heading toward. I think that's a bit the state of Portal right now. There's one more question in the chat from Ivo again. From a technical perspective, I can relate to the value of Portal, but most decision makers with the power to decide if Portal will be accepted will not have a technical background. So the question is, what's the business offer for Portal such that business owners will feel stupid to say no? And I think it's a good question where from Conveyor, as owners of the project have already talked about, in the end, probably you're selling again to IT because it's a platform tool. But as you were mentioning, kind of everyone can use data, and if you will start using data and can use the portal. And if you want to position it as a tool for business users, as everyone can log in on portal, what's the end goal from then? Why does a business owner really need this tool? What do you think, Niels?
Well, just to make it simple, because, for example, if we, as let's say data engineers, if we have a platform to create pipelines and data sets and all kinds of infrastructure, you still need to somehow, make that available to, for us, it's researchers. We don't really have business users, or we're not working with them at least. But those same business users or researchers, they can use Portal. They can deploy their own workflows, but they're not going to do that. But they might also open the AWS console and log in with Athena and write a random ad hoc SQL query. That is possible to some of the more technical users. But there will also be users that just go to the S3, click through the S3 thing to download a file to their own laptop, and that's fine. They already have value from the tool, because to do that without Portal requires a lot of stuff, and eventually would just probably have us write a pipeline to write the resulting data set that they need to download, write it somewhere else, maybe to SharePoint or a shared drive or whatever. But now we can all use kind of the same infrastructure in different levels of technical depth, let's say. For me, that's what we're trying to do with it.
Yeah, to also try to answer the question, I think it's all about providing this overview of what exists. Typically, you will also move to a data catalog, but a data catalog is most often on a table level, individual fields. It's not necessarily the granular level that your business owner cares about. It's about, this is all my marketing data. It's there for a given purpose. You have a marketing data product, you have a sales data product. So it's more on the level that they're used to. From there on, as a single entry point, they can move to what they need. And Niels was already mentioning to the AWS console or to Conveyor, quite technical stuff, but can also be moving to your Tableau dashboard, or your Looker dashboard, or whatever you see as the relevant data output from your data product. So it simplifies your user journey. Where do I log in? Where do I move to? And then it's about allowing you to truly take ownership. You want to use with my marketing related data or my sales related data, feel free to log a request in Portal, and all I need to do is accept, because then I know that at the background an automated process is working, granting you access to whatever you need with the correct permissions. I have no dependencies on other IT teams no longer. So I think that's a bit where that we also see the value for your end business users. I see we're close to running out of time. We have 2 minutes left, but we've addressed all questions. So it remains me to thank Niels. I think the insights you gave us and the work you've been doing at VITO is really nice. So thanks for spending the time with us, Niels. And also for the people I was going to say at home, because I'm dialing in from home, at home or work or wherever you are. Thanks a lot for joining. Hope to see you on our next webinar, which will be in close to 1 month, 26th of September, where I again will be talking with a special guest speaker, not yet confirmed. Hope to confirm it soon, on how the data product portal really accelerates collaboration across diverse roles. So joining the technical person with a business user, a data owner, how that all ties together. So hope to see you there. And I see that Sophia also registered the link to register for the webinar in the chat. So thanks everyone for joining, and once more, Niels, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.